Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who, as an autumn, should decorate accordingly if he wants to live harmoniously in his house.
Tim Longo. Is that a thing?
That's a thing. I got that notice. So we were talking a little bit last time about the sort of chance/community chest kind of little events that happen. Somebody calls on the phone.
I have a humdinger, by the way.
Oh, good. Yeah. I look forward to hearing yours. Well, two things. One, you may recall I had basically a technical issue and I couldn't continue with my "You Discovered Alien Life" storyline, and it did not recur. It didn't happen again. And I was like,
that was a 1 in a million.
That it probably was. It probably was an extremely low chance random event, and I'll never see it again. And it was like $1 million you got for it, or 1 million simoleons. So that was that one. And then this other one was that I don't know if it was just like a help thing or somebody called. It was weird. Bob's been having some problems with the phone, but I want to hear about your humdinger first, and then I'll talk about Bob's phone issues.
Well, I started I totally shifted gears to jump right in, I guess. We're talking about The Sims, by the way.
The Sims.
The original Sims. 2000? 2001? What was
2001, I think we said. I'll look that up while you talk.
I have it in my other notes, but so I took a different route this last time.
2000, right.
Which did mean I left the family behind. maybe someday I'll return, but I doubt it. So they are in their chaotic state. I don't know what their fate is, sadly, but that's in stasis basically. So what I did, kind of based on email we got last week a little bit, was start somebody from scratch. I bulldozed a house in the neighborhood to have an empty lot, and I started the house from scratch.
Nice.
And I basically did everything from scratch. So I made a bachelor, male dude, and whatever. I don't even know how they deal with age for adults, but there isn't an age. But did his stats from scratch. You can fine tune each of those bars, you know what I mean? And it's just like an RPG where you have a set number and you have to distribute that number, a point system.
Point by, yeah.
Yeah, so it's so you distribute that. And for science, I made them all equal because I wanted to see what that would do, right? Like if he was just like middle of the road, not a specialist in anything, just down the line. Because the family, right, everybody had a specialty, the way that they designed that pre-canned family, which we can talk about sort of. I think we should talk about the differences, of course. But I wanted to see how the sim would react. But long story short, I'll get into more details as we go, I guess, and I'll explain more of the journey. It was very, very interesting, by the way, and actually pretty fun as well, I'd say. But pretty early on, I would say like the third day or something, I get a phone call, and I don't know. Was this a thing in the aughts?
This does sound like a humdinger.
They said on the phone, your before and after photo has been chosen for our magazine, Pecs and Glutes.
Oh, wow.
You have won $1,000.
Wow, nice.
Now this guy is
I don't know, Tim. I didn't know you modeled this guy on you.
I know. This guy, I mean, you joke, this guy looks like me. He's a balding white guy that is middle-aged, whatever, a nerd. He's got literally a pocket protector in his shirt.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, what? I don't have a weight set or anything. It was just completely random. And it was very early in his career, in his sim career. So there's no indication. I mean, maybe because I made all the stats, even one of those stats was high enough to warrant, he must be fit or something. But there's no exercise. I haven't done any, there's no I don't have a. I think you can buy a weight set or exercise equipment and stuff, but I hadn't. He was a very mild
Yeah, I
man.
think you can buy a treadmill or something. I think
Yeah,
there are things. I looked around a little bit at some of the buy menu, not because I was going to buy anything, because that's not Bob and Betty style, but I
yeah,
was just
yeah. No, you're
curious.
just seeing what's there. Yeah, and same for me. I was just browsing. I never had enough to buy any of that. But anyway, it's just such a weird. So I got a, I got early on. I got a 10K, bonus, which was nice. But it was just like so random. Like
Yeah,
at least your alien one sort of was related to her job, I guess.
yeah, it sort of was because
Um,
she's in science.
yeah, yeah.
She's on the science
So
track with the logic and stuff. The other thing was that I didn't do. I wondered like because now I'll never know. But did I? Was it
you
the
can look it up.
specific? Was it the specific things I did? And then I later didn't do those same specific things. Just
I think you're
drives me
giving them
crazy.
too much credit.
Yeah,
I think it's
I don't
probably
think it's deterministic. I think it's probably just a huge die roll every so
it's
often.
probably like, are they a scientist?
Right.
Are they past this certain date?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then give them a
Point zero zero zero
or,
zero one
yeah,
percent.
yeah. I mean, because $1 million.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's game changing.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have changed anything. Bob and Betty and I might have gotten that coffee maker we've been saving up for.
But the funny thing is, I don't think there are any mechanisms. There are not many mechanisms in the game to make the main. Which, not to jump ahead to takeaways or anything, but there. I don't think there are many mechanisms in the game to help make the maintenance part of life in The Sims easier. So
No.
if you have $1 million, can you hire
Nope. Not in this game.
anybody?
No,
Yeah,
you can't get a maid or whatever. So
gardener.
gardener, no, none of that is available. I
So
think
it's
in later editions of the game,
oh, I'm sure.
your neighborhood is kind of more you're controlling the neighborhood aspect is a bigger thing in terms of who are all the people in your neighborhood
Yeah,
um
yeah, I saw
uh,
that coming.
yeah, they're the people you meet each day.
Yeah.
um but yeah, so there's none of that, and so it did lead to me like really reflecting this week that it is impossible for Bob and Betty to live the life they have without Bob working at home all day. I mean, he does do some work. He works on his paintings. He's getting better with his creativity. He's on his third painting, I think, which looks like a Mondrian, which, if you had a real Mondrian, that would do quite well for you, I think. I don't know where they get the pictures from. One looks like they basically, each picture, they're different styles. One was sort of like a Renaissance painting. One was sort of looked like a
Yeah, he
photograph, somebody's
my guy's
wedding.
painting too. Yeah, it looked like a wedding. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third one was the, some abstract expressionism. But yeah, so it occurred to me this week that without Bob being there to do all this stuff that needs to happen, it would not be possible for them to live this life at all, which I think is a commentary on suburban life. And I think it does, again, put it kind of in the sort of 50s aesthetic,
Mm,
now I'm playing against the sort of gender norms that the 50s would represent, and having Bob be the house husband and all of that stuff. He has occasionally called, her name is actually Bella Goth, over to socialize because he doesn't get enough socializing time. So every now and again he needs, like
yeah,
he that's his 1 meter that he's is never going to go anywhere. Like
yeah.
I'm,
I ran
it's,
into that too. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
have to talk about it.
be at 50%. But anyway, managing this suburban style life requires others. I mean, I realized with the maintenance stuff that my light bulbs all died. Like
What?
if you have lamps, they have light bulbs, and you have to replace them. And it's like you might never click on the lamp. They mostly kind of go on and off by themselves because the Sims turn them on as they pass by them. If it's night, some of them just turn on automatically.
Yeah,
But I noticed that the bathroom, like whenever they went in the bathroom, the room like value was going down. And I was like, it's really weird. Like he just cleaned the shower and the toilet today, and yet they're in there before bed, using the bathroom. And then I clicked over on the lamp because it was dark in there. I'm like, well, it's a little dim in here. Normally they turn on the lights, and it didn't go on. I'm like, oh, I have to repair the lamp. The bulb was
Interesting.
burnt out. Like, so, it's down to that. Like, I think everything has kind of a timer. Like, I don't
Hmm.
know about chairs and tables, but it feels like everything has a timer when something bad's going to happen. And it's just a matter of time, or something good's going to happen. Like, the discovering extraterrestrial life, which would change all kinds of things, and apparently very much enrich the newbies, who, because Bob Newhart passed away this week, I've been thinking about my Bob as Bob Newhart now.
Mm,
Same kind of
yeah.
look, kind of a schlubby,
Yeah. Yeah.
suburban
The
guy.
young Bob Newhart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah, let's go to yours, because you talked about some of the things that have changed with you as a bachelor, and how hard it is for him to keep up.
Yeah, and because obviously he doesn't start with a job, so immediately. So I mean, I'll just go as quickly as I can through the process a little bit because I do think it's interesting. So because there wasn't an empty lot as far as I could understand it, so I did have to bulldoze an empty house. It was one of the preset houses that they give you that you can choose to, but I wanted to see if I could start from scratch. So I made him down the line, equal down the line for all of his stats. Then I bulldoze that thing. You claim the lot, and he pops up. This is just hilarious how it all works. He pops up standing there by the mailbox in this empty lot, and it's like the sim is running, and
Okay.
I'm like, oh, okay. So I pause, of course, and then I just start building, and I think I had 12K or something. So I built a studio, basically a studio apartment, where almost everything but the bathroom is in one room, right? And I tried to make it as obviously everything's there, so it's fairly efficient. All he has to do is get up and walk, across the room or what have you. But obviously, as you might imagine, down the road that became more complicated because guests and all that kind of stuff. If I wanted social aspects, so so I populated a little bit of the house. It's a very small house, of course, but because it's small, I had more money to I did a nice patio. I put some flowers outside, hedges and things, right? So
Hmm.
and everything is currently is still pretty good. Like he's in a pretty good mood. I've been maintaining him for I don't know 7 or 8 days maybe. And But there's as you might imagine when you get a job,
Hmm.
as you're kind of commenting on the suburban life of it, it didn't dawn on me immediately, but it definitely dawned on me right away once he left the house. That whole thing about weekends,
Yeah.
and also the whole thing about like he has gotten one promotion as well, which I guess their solution to the weekend problem is to lessen your work hours so you have more time at home.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
noticed that, because she moved up 2 ranks right in a row, so it was very noticeable that Betty was suddenly working whatever, 6 hours, maybe
Yeah.
7 hours? I think she started at 9 and then went 8, 7. I think she's at 7 now. Yeah,
Yeah. So
I thought.
similar thing. So he has a little bit more time at home. But I started off before he got a job, really being very micromanagey. Um, uh, but the first thing he does, so I made a few different things, or I populated and bought a few different things in the house once it was kind of decorated and stuff. And then, you know me, like I like to build, so it was fun to be really from scratch. And he's literally kind of like out there tapping his toe, waiting for the house to be built. And then as soon as I unpause and he goes in, the first thing he does is drink coffee. I did build a coffee maker. It was so funny. And then the second and third, fourth thing that he did is he walked around the house and basically gave me feedback on what he liked and didn't like. So it was
Mm,
really fascinating because he walked over to the bed and was like, "That bed I don't like."
mm.
So I was like, well, I got him a single bed. So I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
well, maybe that's for kids. So I got him a regular bed. That was probably the solution. He loved the hedges that I put outside. He was clapping and doing his weird
Right, right, I get it.
simlish kind of behavior that is a little creepy if you ask me. And, they're just like clapping like children, but not speaking a language. And the thought bubbles. So it was just kind of interesting to kind of immediately get feedback on how I did building wise, and then you obviously immediately start seeing the bars do what they're going to do too, right? So, but the clean slate of it, because like we talked about last time, the fact that I started with a pre-built house and I did add to it in the first family, and I started with the pre-made family, came with a bunch of assumptions about what that family's goals were that I had to discover over time.
Right.
Where here it's a clean slate. Like I'm going to basically direct his life, right? Of like what is important to him for the most part, especially because all of his stats are the same. And so yeah, it was just a really like quite a big flip on the script in that regard. But as soon as he went to work, the dread kind of sets in of like, oh no, okay. And then the interesting thing that I never got, you probably got this, it sounded like from previous episodes, you got this with the newbies. I finally got to like a schedule, like a daily schedule, because I never was able to get that far or have that much control, I guess, over the family, because it was just 4 people. They're running every which way. There's just too much.
Right.
So
Yeah, it would be constant chaos. And like even switching, because I largely let Betty do her own thing because she's a strong, independent woman, and who am I to tell her what to be doing? And she mostly, what's really nice is that she also wants, because their relationship is good, like it seems like she wants to do things with Bob. So he has the routine and she follows that routine just by the fact of me having him do the routine. So for example, she comes home. I do usually control this. Another tiny little commentary. The first thing that she does when she gets home is she goes and picks up the newspaper and puts it straight in the recycling, which is the most efficient way to dispose of the newspaper every day, which is another little commentary on the death of the American newspaper. It's a little prophetic in 2000. But it's very funny because literally every day I hear she's arriving, I switch over to her and I click on the newspaper and I select recycle. Because for a long time I was bringing it in and it was getting put in the trash and I have to take the trash out. And, why do all of that? I'll just never put anything in the trash. Because the only thing that they throw away is the newspaper. So that happened. But then while she's doing that, he sits down at the chess table and I make him do that. Like, start playing chess. And she immediately goes to the chess table. And then that's his social time. That and when they eat dinner is Bob's social time. And that basically is just keeping the wolves at bay. Like he's always right there in the middle somewhere. I mean, there was one day where I was starting to worry about it. Like, oh, it's starting to trend. It was like at 40%. I'm like, I can't let it keep going. I have to find another way. And so I called Bella Goth and she came over and they just had a long conversation. And his social went way up. All these other meters were going down because he was getting tired. Like they weren't sitting somewhere, so he was standing up. So his comfort was going down. They were outdoors and maybe hadn't watered the plants in a while, so the room was going down. Like all these things were going down, but the important thing was he was socializing. Everything else I could recover from because everything else was pretty good. The fun is the other one that because he does all the chores, his fun burns out fast. So I always have. That's why he has an easel and does painting. But I manage him, and her I don't manage much. I do try to, if she doesn't automatically go do something with him, I will kind of nudge her and say like, he's serving dinner, you should go eat. Sometimes she'll cook because he's feeling a little run down. He'll go take a little nap in the Barcalounder. But it's remarkable like how they've fallen into a schedule entirely. Like it's very, I mean, it's not the same thing every day for Bob because I cycle him through, watering the plants in the front, cleaning the bathroom, watering the plants in the back, those are the things that he does, but then there'll be a wild card. Like one day the sink in the bathroom just started spewing water. Water was all over the floor. And so that needed to be repaired. So he did the repair. And that like threw him all off. It was probably the next day that he needed the socializing. So because he had such a bad day because I think he went to bed early. That's done a whole nother thing with him, which I can totally relate to. There's this weird thing where the phone's been ringing in like the middle of the night.
Yeah, I had that happen too.
Okay. And Bob will wake up but he won't go get the phone because it stops ringing right away, but it wakes him up.
Yeah.
And not her. She never wakes up. And it's weird.
Oh, interesting. Well, the other thing I kept, because I'm all in one room, I kept leaving the TV on.
Oh yeah.
And he would try to go to bed, and because it's right next to his bed, basically, he would get all pissed and get up, and I was like, "Oh shit, I forgot to turn the TV
turn
off."
TV.
Yeah, which is obvious, but
yeah,
it's so funny how you're describing like life. It's like, we do this and we do this, and then the next day we do the same thing, and then this, and but I mean, like, so the timing of things is interesting. Because, and this is again something I just didn't experience with the other family because it was just always so chaotic. I was just like, talking about keeping the wolves at bay. It was like every bar, I was fighting every bar for all four of them every day. So all I could do was not, fail essentially. But here I'm actually able to be proactive somewhat. But like, once he did get a job, not fully understanding the timing of the morning routine, right off the bat, had to learn that. It's like, does he have to get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., and trying both of those, and it's just not something that I had the luxury of experiencing. So he had time to make breakfast and not be rushed to get to, to the carpool and stuff. So it was kind of cool to get to that point where I could have enough ownership as a player over the game to make a schedule, and like it's like min-maxing in an RTS or something. It's like, what's the most efficient? Okay, 5 a.m. I should really get up at 5 a.m. because that's going to give me enough time to shower, go to the bathroom, whatever, make dinner or make breakfast and actually eat breakfast before the thing comes, the carpool comes. And then so I got into but like you said, they throw wild cards, like something breaks or whatever, and if I then I'm leaving the house with a low room score because I didn't have time to clean up or fix that.
Right, the water that's now sitting on the floor all day.
Exactly. Yeah. So you go to work in a bad mood, which impacts your work, your work performance, etc. So it is interesting how it's all networked together. But then I forgot about this sort of memes before there were memes when the game came out. I kept getting burgled.
Really?
And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because he's by himself or what it is, but
nobody's home.
Nobody. Well, no. This was while he was asleep. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. In the same room. So if you remember the PR for the game, but like the burglar looks like a mime.
He's like and there's also a burglar on the strategy guide cover.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that gosh darn burglar. So, they give you a little picture-in-picture. He's coming into the neighborhood. And I didn't know how it worked at the time. But basically, when you see him, you have to tell your sim to get up immediately because it takes them forever to get up. And so by the time he gets up, the burglar's already in the house stealing stuff and then finally, scares him away. But he's like, it takes forever. So you got to like rush to it. So I had to buy an alarm. I bought an alarm system for the house, and now the burglars doesn't come back. But that burglar came twice, stole both my chairs, my stove, my easel.
Stole your stove?
Yeah, literally, he walks over, and it just poofs, and there's even a little sound for it. It's like,
oh, that's funny,
bling or something.
Yeah.
So that's like another random variable of like, you're not in control. Of course, I had to burn money buying that stuff again. I didn't reload or anything, so I didn't save from it because I wanted to see what would happen. But it's just, and he came back like I was, I guess I was a good place to come and burgle, steal stuff from. So I had to buy another stove and stuff. So
that is wild. I mean, I've been having, because Bob does all these chores every day, and his major outlet for fun is normally, well, at least sometimes, a couple times a week, he'll paint. So he's actually not getting as much rest there as he could. His energy meter's going down faster because he's standing and his comfort is going down, I guess. And so there's a lot of days where it's the end of the day and he's pretty tired and it's like 7:30. And I'm like, well, maybe I should send him to bed soon. But what the way the sleeping seems to work is that once their energy bar is filled, they will get up.
Mm,
And if that's 3 in the morning, then they get up at 3 in the morning.
yeah. I think I wrote a note down where I feel like they only need to sleep like 6 hours or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that you can get them up early and they'll complain, but their energy meters are fine. So you're like, well, okay, yeah, it's a pain to get up in the morning, but this is the lives we lead.
Yeah.
This is what we have chosen as a society. So tough. But yeah, that's really interesting that you've definitely seen. I mean, your two experiences, you've seen a lot more of the game than I have, because I'm deliberately minimizing the surface of the game I expose. I'm going really deep on
Yeah. Yeah.
the specific thing I'm trying to achieve, which is basically detente with the game
Yeah,
systems.
exactly.
And I'm
Yeah.
basically just kind of holding it at bay, in in a way that's just I mean, it does mean that I can't imagine doing this indefinitely. It feels like it would get exhausting. Like something's got to give at some point.
You need
Something,
some progress. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's just something different, because literally they have this very set routine that they do every day. And, um, it may on the margins change a little bit here and there. Like sometimes he'll go in to prepare dinner and she's kind of fine with a lot of her bars because whatever, she had a good morning, set things up. I'm sure there's some randomness in how things decay. So it's like she'll actually go and paint for a little while, because I'm just letting her do whatever she wants to do. And when the food's ready, she'll go in and eat. Um, but there's something great with the two characters of having a moment where he picks up his plate to eat, and immediately after she picks up her plate to eat, and they both sit down almost exactly at the same time, and then they have their whole meal to eat and socialize because they're doing
Yeah.
the activity together. And it
Yeah.
feels like, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like it's like a perfect clockwork, but it happens so rarely. So it's like, it also makes me reflect on like celebrating those moments where things just work out in these
Yeah.
crazy lives we lead of just like, and it just happened today that I walked outside at the same time my neighbor did, and we laughed because the doors both slammed, or just whatever weird human synchronicity there is in the world, to have those moments and just like enjoy that and just like reflect it. Yeah, there's a certain amount of randomness here and chaos, and the chaos lined up for us today, and we should smile about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool that a game can make you think about that stuff for sure. We've mentioned that before, but and I the the focus that having just one sim gave me too, to really like explore the game and
Mm.
understand more. Like with the other family, I don't think I increased any one skill. I never had time to like
Oh, right.
fill a bar or something like that. So I was able to do that with him multiple times. But it is as you might imagine, it is a lonely existence. And so
Yeah.
Bob Newby actually in my neighborhood, Bob Newby ended up, it was the first time I had a friend. So I got to the point where he was officially in a family friend, and I got the little happy face, and
Oh, cool.
so I did that whole process essentially. But the funny thing about it, going back to sort of like echoing life, that created anxiety for me, that it
Mm.
is not anxiety that I want in a game,
Right.
is there was fairly quickly, like the next day, there was a pop-up that said, you have this friend, you have to make sure that you keep socializing with this
Right.
friend, or
Right.
the friend will go away, and it's like, well, I mean, that's sort of true, but that's not always true in real life. So now I have this, and basically I don't think I fully lost him as a friend, but I lost the status that I had, because now that I'm going to work, I don't have the time to do all the chores and keep the house in order and have Bob over for dinner. And I mean, I probably could time it out and get it to just work, like you said, clockwork wise, but it's a lot, it'd be midnight by the time that whole process was over.
Right.
So it's really like and because he lives alone, which maybe like I've chosen the two extreme,
Yeah. Yeah, you have.
accidentally I've chosen the two extremely difficult things to do, because he lives alone, I have to do proactive socialization. Although I will say that Bob and even the ghosts came over on their own originally, and so they gave opportunities. But I pissed off the ghosts somehow. I don't remember what I did, but they were pretty. They left kind of low, and I never. But Bob, we like chatted about whatever sports and stuff, and eventually became friends.
Yeah, if you pick the wrong like interpersonal activities,
Yeah,
then they can go wrong. I think at one point I complimented. It was early on. I complimented Bella Goth and was like
yeah,
that drove her away, or maybe it was she complimented him, Malcolm. Maybe she complimented the other guy. I think we don't have a good relationship with him, and we haven't really tried. We don't. We never call, in the evenings when he's at home because, of course, he's working during the day. So it's we've never had that experience with him. It was like we had one social experience where we ticked him off and we haven't seen him again. So we're having kind of a similar experience, but with the same people. Well, one of them anyway. Mia, I've been able to keep, or rather Bella, I keep saying Mia because of the actress. But I haven't been able to, I've been able to keep that one going generally positive. I mean, it's very infrequent because he feels a little guilty about it. But he's got that meter, Bob.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I didn't even know there was a sort of a status of like, because a pop-up came up like, you have a family friend, and it's like you cross a threshold.
Right.
But my point is like, now there's obligation to that.
Right. It erodes. Which is everything erodes.
Yeah, it erodes. And it's like, I mean, I understand where they're going with that, but it's like, anyway, it's sort of like,
it creates a real tension, that you feel like you've been given a goal that you can't attain.
Yeah, and I think I don't know what it is. I think, and this will come in my takeaways somewhat. I think because they're simulating quote unquote real life or modern life, even if it's in the 50s or whatever, they're it's life on Earth. I think it changes things psychologically for me than if it were like simulating a medieval castle or something, right? Or something that I'm much more removed from, or like a fantasy setting, especially, or sci-fi setting. So I think the fact that I can impose a lot more of reality to the game, it makes, for me at least, the anxiety go up further because, I might relate it subconsciously even to something else in my life, right? Where I feel like, oh, I haven't talked to that person in so long. Are we still friends? It's like, I don't want to be reminded by that, about that, right? In a video game, at least. So it's really fascinating kind of social experiment in a way, or human experiment that, again, like I know that he's kind of very on the record calling it a toy, but it's like, I don't know if a toy is, for me at least, the right way to talk about it.
Well, I also think it may hit differently at our age now than it would hit if you were a stereotypical, 18 to 30 gamer, in 2000, right? And the way, even then it would have hit weird to me because, I already had a kid in 2000. I had my second on the way when this game came out. So it wouldn't have necessarily hit for me, but I'm, a lot of people who, weren't kind of in that stage of their life yet. If you're 24 and playing this game, it might be like Grand Theft Auto for you, right? It's just, pure unadulterated fun, right? To see all these wacky things that can happen. But, now when we're older, we're like reflecting on lives, still hopefully with a lot left to live. But definitely, probably more than halfway there. And, it causes a lot more, reflection and reminiscence on what those frictions are and have been in our lives and where we've made choices that we wish we hadn't, and I think if you're younger and you haven't had those yet, of course, this is a broad generalization, so, don't take it as insulting, but broadly speaking, right, you're more apt to enjoy the play of those things. You know what I mean? Because you haven't you haven't felt a negative feeling about it yet. Maybe,
Yeah.
so you have it can be more experimental and more of a like, oh man, do you see what my crazy sim did today? Peed his pants in front of all the people, whatever. Whereas of course that would be mortifying. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I feel like also anecdotally, this game, one of the recipes to its success was the fact that um, different demographics were playing it than normal too. Like
mhm,
you're right on the 18 to 34-year-old or whatever, but I feel like different just different groups were playing this that weren't playing other games. Like, you know what I mean?
right.
Different genders, different ages, because it was not Grand Theft Auto or what have you. So um, it's interesting to see that it. I think you're right as far as like the gamer, because it was sort of a fascinating way to play a game, but also like everyone was coming to it with a different perspective, even though, like we talked about, whatever, Mario's the biggest franchise of all time, and this one's the ninth biggest franchise of all time. People go to Mario for a smaller band of reasons
Right.
than this. Do you
Yeah.
know? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? It's
Yeah.
like,
No,
yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
that's just like it's Mario. You're just having fun playing a video game, and in fact, Nintendo always talks about their games as toys, and it's like, yeah, I know what you mean when you
Right.
say that. But for Sims, it's like it's not going to be the same for every audience member, which is really kind of fascinating that it is so big, and probably why it's so big, because
Yeah.
it's, you can be somebody older and have a different, more intense experience maybe, or something, or younger too. But um I don't know, it's such a fascinating, obviously we're playing it because we're glad it was made,
Yeah.
and that it has obviously had a big impact on video games, because there's not just things that have spawned from it, but just things have chased it and not succeeded. There's never really been a successor fully to it, or somebody to topple it, and it's still going today. So it's just such a weird, such even weirder than the SimCity games, I think, and those
Yeah.
sorts of games, because
I
it's
think
so
Sims
focused
4
on,
just had a big update this week, actually.
yeah, all about relationships and
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah. I saw that too. And I think some fan favorite model was back or something like that. Um, Speaking of the model,
Yeah, you should talk about that.
I wanted to get to the two aspects of the tech that that we haven't talked a lot about. One is sort of how the objects work, and the and then the sort of modding community that kind of came from that. The other is sort of online sharing, which is kind of a separate thing. The mod the modability of this game was huge for it, and a huge part of its success, and always part of the design. And they built the game basically as a series of mods. Every item has its own logic for how it works. It
Hmm.
has basically a I'm sure they don't tick that frequently. It's probably like once an hour in game time or something like that. Like update your state. Who knows how frequent it is? I'm sure it's not anywhere near something like quote unquote real time. It's probably some sort of staggered thing. Um, but they have basically various entry points into their scripting language to do stuff. So when I interact, what if two people interact? What if more than two people interact? And they will change what happens. It's like, oh, put them into increasing social, put them into into these different buckets. And they also of course all have these sort of attributes that they satisfy, so that if you're just letting the Sims run around on their own, they're kind of doing falling into the gravity wells of like, well, and the gravity is basically based on how low that meter is and whether there's anything near them that will fill that meter. The obvious thing is the hunger, like, oh, I can go to the fridge and make food, like no brainer. But a lot of the other ones, like fun, it's like, well, that's kind of a more complicated. I'm going to pick this one over that one because it's closer, or I'm going to pick
Hmm.
this one over that one because I don't like fountains, but I do. It's like some other inherent thing. I'm gonna pick this thing because it doesn't make a mess and I'm really neat, or whatever. Like there's all these things that cause these things to work. And all the logic, the animations that play on the characters and all of that is actually encoded in the object itself. So if you put a soccer ball out in the world, the soccer ball has the kick animation on it. And when the soccer ball is interacted with, the kick animation then plays on the character,
Mm.
which is another important how they put all this stuff together kind of piece of it. So I'm drawing on lots of talks and
Yeah, that's
reading from
cool.
the time, but that's how that worked. And at the time, I remember thinking, "That's amazing! Like that is
Yeah.
the way to do this." And because a lot of other simulating people, like Sid Meier, for example, did not work that way. He wrote these huge long functions with lots of branching in them, because that's the way his mind worked. Rather than being like, oh, well, there's this, the world works this way. And when these interactions happen, this falls out. So his emergence came out of like a more directly constructed thing. And then, others worked other ways. And in this case, they were very object oriented.
Yeah, I remember going to one of Will Wright's talks where he showed that sort of almost heat map
Yeah.
kind of top down that
Yeah.
was probably a debug mode of some kind where you could see what I think Gravity Well is a great description of it, where you could see where they were going to be pulled based on their current mood, and what things had what and how they were changing over time. That isn't seen to the player, but
Right.
seen by the player, but is really fascinating to see that behind the curtain.
Yeah, you can sort of feel it, to a certain degree, the way they'll, probably not so much in my super small house which doesn't have multiple ways of satisfying anything. So it's like they always do the one thing, which is sort of the way you've gone with your bachelor. It's like a very simple space.
It's like, yeah.
Because that makes it predictable, right? And to some degree, I mean, there's still random events that happen, but that you have something to address all the major needs. And the fact that we personally would probably go out of our minds if it was only those things, they don't really seem to care. I don't think that there's something going on with that. The other part, and I'm just going to touch on this very briefly because I've never really interacted with it all that deeply, but they had an online sharing site where you could tell stories about your Sims that you constructed in the game. So, I remember famously there was one about a homeless family, like a father and daughter, I think, story that was told in this way using the Sims. I think the original Sims might have been later, might have been Sims 2. Telling their story through photographs of what happened in their life. There was text around it and everything like that. And that was part of the whole thing, was like you could basically create like a GeoCities webpage for your sim, for your sim story, for the sims that you have been making, and kind of share it that way. And I believe, nowadays there's more ways to do that stuff, with the rise of streaming and all of those sorts of things, YouTube videos, etc.
Social media.
Yeah, all the different ways you can share this stuff now has I'm sure changed that community. But there was the nugget of those ideas here, where it's like anybody can sort of reach out and kind of connect with other people around the world who like to play the Sims the way they did, who just were telling interesting stories, so I think that was another huge thing for the series. Because I don't keep up with it. I mean, I'm sure that some of the other technical stuff I've talked about hasn't really changed too deeply. I mean, I'm sure richer and deeper, but still fundamentally the same model. This one, I'm not sure how it works anymore. Whether they've kept up with that aspect where EA would basically host, a huge website of data. That may have kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. I'd love to know if anybody plays Sims 4, whether they still do those things.
Yeah, I mean, the to your point, both the modding and that stuff was, I mean, very quickly when this game launched, and as the series has been going, this quote unquote Sims community has always been very bustling, and kind of like an infamous kind of community of really like devoted players. And to your point on the sharing thing, like even in the version we're playing, which doesn't go anywhere, there's a link to the website.
Yeah.
Right on the front end.
Right. Yeah.
As high value as,
as
creating a sim,
Yeah.
So that's a big decision for them to make, and really smart in the time. We were living in the era of Quake mods being popular, like modding in other places was also creating communities, but none of the Sims had done something like this, and still to this day, not very many of them do.
Right.
So
Right.
it was kind of a very strategic. It ended up being a very strategically good call.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could upload like more, like upload your family or something like that so that somebody else could pick up from where you were just by downloading what you had. Something you could imagine them doing. Something
Well, the
like Animal
photo mode is
Crossing.
built in, right? There's a
Yeah, there's a photo mode.
photo
Yeah.
button, right? So
Yeah.
getting a screenshot or a photo of what's going on is really
Exactly. You can create these flip books, and that's what people would basically do. And then I was going to say that the sort of modern other sorts of games that we played is the Animal Crossing had the asynchronous play where multiple people could play in the same Animal Crossing world, just not at the same time. So that was kind of, you play at different times. And there's some great stories out there. If you ever want to have a particularly tearful one, there's one about a mother who passes away and has left all these letters for her son in his mailbox in Animal Crossing. And in the most recent Animal Crossing, the one on the Switch, you could actually go and visit other people's islands. So they're finding their own way to integrate this kind of play. I think, did we do that? I feel like I did that with you.
Yeah, we did. I think we did a bonus on that.
Yeah, I think we did a bonus on that.
Yeah, I played a fair amount of that one, of the new one. Yeah.
Is it a new leaf? Is that right?
Maybe. I'm always forgetting all of the names.
I can't remember the Animal Crossing game names.
The new one is very good, though. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the apex of that franchise. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was into it while we played it, and then I was like, yeah, I don't play my Switch a lot. I don't know why. It's the portability. Portability is not my thing, I guess. I like to be on the couch. I mean, granted, you can play it that way, but it just, I don't know, feels antithetical.
Place to play it. Yeah.
Anyway, well, those were a couple things that we hadn't really touched on. I want to make sure we touched on them.
Yeah, those are good. Those are important.
Yeah, before we move on to takeaways, we're here at the end of a series. We're going to do some takeaways, as we always do. And of course, I throw over first to you, sir, so that I can reconstruct my list around you.
Well, you're so gracious. It's so gracious to you for that. Okay, and then I don't know what order I should start, but the first one I have here is a weird one, but I've written it down as the closer to real, the closer to question mark, and then in parentheses I put anxiety. And I talked about it already on this episode earlier, but I was alluding to this takeaway that obviously they're not really trying to simulate reality, but you know what I mean. It's like it's a house, it's a family, it's a neighborhood, it's a suburb, and I guess I just I don't play a lot of these kinds of games. If I'm playing a sim, I'm a Viking or a block man,
yeah.
So, which
I
love,
or both probably,
Yeah, I love survival sims. It's one of my favorite genres right now, and I've put a lot of time into them. But when it's like a suburban house and they're trying to simulate things like I need to get coffee or go to work or something, it's like it's. I get how you get here.
Yeah.
Especially if you've made games like SimCity. I get why he got here and why they got here.
Well, and he always wanted to get here, to be sure.
Right, exactly. Like you mentioned in the first episode. Yeah, they're like he had goals. And good for him and them that it's like they did it, right? Like success, huge success. And all of his theories panned out. It's like, yeah, this is something people will want to do. But for me, it's like I feel like it's a little bit, as a player, it's a little bit of be careful what you wish for. It's like, yes, even for the first iteration of this, Sims 1 that we played, it's amazing. There's a lot going on, and it's clearly super deep. I think I mentioned on some of those forums I found, like people are still playing it to this day, this version to this day, because it's their favorite version, which a lot of franchises have that, where people like, the earlier versions and still play them. So it's definitely a magical experience, but it's just really interesting to see what the impact of having it, trying to simulate things like friendship in this, um, simulated way, in this almost like academic way, where you have to boil a friendship down to these stats and timers and things, and it just freaks me out. Just it's just too much. And I did play a little bit of Sims 1 when it came out, because we were at Lucas at the time, and everyone was playing it, and everyone was like, what is this? And people were boxing their Sims into walls, and it was
Right,
a horror show. But it didn't land with me then, and I didn't continue playing it, and I kind of think I know why.
yeah,
So.
yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, for me, this was a triumph. I've made a note here. Huge success.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yep. Yeah, for
we
me,
didn't sing that.
oh, sorry. I wanted to see if I could slip it by you.
No.
The well, you do have some memory. The first one, mine, is kind of a flip side of that, which is how much, and I mentioned this in the first episode, I think, and it's really stuck with me. It's just how much of life they tried to incorporate, that is clearly their goal. I think, if I compare something with that, I think they found the right level of abstraction. Like you don't have to fill the fridge. When you're done with a book, it just disappears. Same with a lot of chores. Like you go, I mean, that partly falls out of their object model and all of that. It would have been a way more complicated game if, like, to water the plants, you also had to have a watering can that was in the back, and you would go,
that's a
and
good point.
So there's a level of abstraction that allows this to happen, but they sort of don't dodge anything. I did pay attention to them, getting into bed, and actually I think they turn their legs off about halfway through that animation, and that's why it looks so weird.
It's a horror show there too.
It is pretty creepy.
And them getting up too. It's like, what are you doing?
Where's that all coming from? Nobody gets into bed this way. Yeah, but I mean, just the fact that they have a huge breadth, I think out of that actually comes a lot of depth, which is not usually how things go. And I think it's because they let these meters swing pretty widely, and you can have a blast, or you can be, this is okay, and then they find some additional friction with, unfair time pressures and things like that I think lead to your anxiety. But for me, just the feeling of they really went for it, and figured out what their line was, and made sure that all the major aspects of human life, are there. So it's amazing to me. And I as much as I joke of how I'll get bored with Bob and Betty, I still haven't. And I've played a lot of hours with Bob and Betty, and replayed some hours in just the same way, or as much as I could remember to. So I don't know. I find that really is fantastic for me.
It is a triumph for sure. Yeah. And I think it's a good partner to my takeaway, because what it's dawning on me too is that everybody brings different things to every video game that they play, but in this one in particular, I feel like, my first takeaway had a lot to do with what I'm bringing to the table. You know what I mean? How I'm imposing certain anxieties onto the game that the game wasn't asking for. And it is just a simulation. It is just a tool or a toy. And I'll get to my last takeaway related to that. But I'm bringing a lot of that baggage to it, right? So it's interesting that everybody can have different experiences with something like this, because it is so relatable. The fact that it is closer to real makes it more relatable.
Yeah, there's only so many feelings, much as we enjoy them, you can have about Halo.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, people have lots of feelings about Halo.
I'm sure. Maybe a bad example in your case.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. Your second one, sir.
This one I mentioned a couple episodes ago, or maybe last episode. The something that for me as a designer that I'm taking away is this balance between maintenance and progression that I don't think I've ever really uttered it that way in my day-to-day life. But for me, it's an axis that I now will maybe think a little bit more about, depending on the game, of course, because we don't really make simulation games, but we make games that have some aspects that would connect a little bit. But this concept that was really bumming me out in a way, or at least had an impact. I won't say bumming me out, but had a really big impact in this game is this concept of, your plate spinning and you have these bars, these fuses basically that you're managing.
Yeah, that's another way to look at them.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I look at life as a series of fuses.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
Get
sorry.
some pennies and put them in there.
It got dark there. But this concept of maintenance and these bars, right? But there's also this drive. There's this light RPG layer to the game where you want to progress, right? In some way, it could be educational, it could be monetary, it could be various relationships, whatever it is. And I'm talking about the long term. It's like the bars are the short term, but the long term, there is some sense of progression. And I don't think either of us got to the point where, like my solo bachelor, the job he got was as a campaign worker.
Oh,
So I
okay.
guess, which was the same as Diane in
Right.
the other family. So I guess that's probably like on the politician track. So maybe someday he can be president. I don't know. So, but I kind of like put that goal out there into the ether.
Yeah.
But progressing my creativity or seeing that bar go up, which is something I have to proactively do, but I have to do that at the same time as maintenance,
Right.
which is also life, right?
Yeah.
But also hits a little too close to home.
Yeah.
So it's just that those are like, we talk about progression in our day-to-day life all the time, but like the sort of maintenance side of it is something that never has really been something. So that's an interesting takeaway for me personally.
For sure. For me, I mean, we've talked a lot about the bars. I think that the choice to externalize all of this information, I mean, make visible, I should say, not externalize is not really the right word. Just to make visible all the meters and how much they're ticking down. It's very visible. Like you can have it up all the time. You could choose the other ones too. If you care, like to look at those longer term goals, you can sort of click to those things, see how your relationship is going, see how whatever, but most of the time you're just there on the mood. And you're just checking out the vibes. And because that stuff is really visible, and then I think one of the ways it really ties into the economy really well is that you look and you're like, oh, but I could get this thing. Like I've been having this problem where I can't, the hunger is always coming back really fast. Maybe if I got the better stove, or I don't have enough energy to get through the day. Maybe if I got a better coffee maker, or I don't have because they basically just put the numbers right there. Like this thing costs this much and it's going to do this for you. And you can see those things ticking down. It kind of makes it, I mean, it's more like a board game. It's like a real-time board game in that way, and of like a European style, I guess you'd say.
The game of life.
Yep, the game of life. And I actually really appreciate that because, if I had something that I don't love about Animal Crossing is that there isn't any sense of that. It's kind of like it's all literally external. It's like, can I collect all the shells? Can I catch all the fish? Can I, am I going to pick up all the weeds? I might go around and talk with people and things like that. And, I haven't.
They try to put that basically into the animal relationships, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they do have some sort of interplay between them. But here, like, I'm just battling the fuses, but the fuses are very clear, and what I can do about them is very clear. I might not be able to do that right now because I don't have the funds to do it right now or whatever. And a lot of the tension comes from that. But that choice to make that stuff all very visible and parsable in a way that, as we talked about, SimCity was not for us, I think is really a strength.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I had to buy an alarm. They forced me to buy an alarm.
Made you.
$250.
You couldn't afford not to.
I couldn't afford not to. They, just stealing me. I think I lost 4 chairs from that, and 2 stoves.
Wow.
And 2 easels. He would always come and steal the same stuff. So I don't know if it was based on value, but he literally stole the art that I was painting.
And that probably wasn't worth that much.
No, it wasn't even done.
The emotional cost.
Yeah.
The oil paints you had sunk into that one.
Yeah. And I'm sleeping in the same room. It's like I'm right there.
You couldn't get up fast enough to
in the process of trying to get up. Yeah, I'm trying to like get out of bed as he's like stealing my stove, and then so funny. Should have recorded it.
Yeah. Yes. You have one more?
Yeah, the last one is should be quick because I talked ad nauseum about it with SimCity, but it's a reminder in a weird way, though it's often hard to apply this to any games that we make right now, or in our past, that the choices you're making as you tune a game are going in a game like this and SimCity are going to inherently and are going to imply a commentary of some kind, because um, people are going to impose some sort of meaning from how something, what things are difficult, what things are easy, why is one relationship working over another. We talked about some gender questions. I won't say issues, but like questions about how they
Mm-hmm.
do it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is a small aside, because I created my character from scratch. The astrological sign that you have for
Mm-hmm.
your Sims is completely based on their attributes.
Interesting.
So you cannot actually select it. What happens is, as you move those bars, as you put points into different things, the astrological sign changes dynamically. And so when I made everything equal, like I wanted to be a Taurus because that's what I am, I I couldn't do it because of
All and
Taurus.
in World of Warcraft.
And in exactly, that's exactly why I'm a Tauran. Uh, I couldn't do it because a Taurus has to have certain stats. So I don't know if this is true or why this is true, but
Huh.
somebody with all equal stats is a Cancer. That's
Wow.
just what the game says. So my
That's what
point,
they're saying. Mediocrity is a cancer on our. No, I don't think that's what they're saying.
well, I don't know. I don't know astrological symbols enough to know what attributes
I,
Cancers have.
I don't.
If they're
It's the
like,
crab, right? So
yeah, it's the crab, but maybe they're very, neutral people, right? That like to balance
yeah,
things a lot
maybe.
and like
Yeah,
keep
I would
keep the
think that would be a
peace.
Libra, but
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. So I don't know, but it's just like, I guess my point is, some designer
yeah, worked out how the
decided
system worked.
what attributes are associated with what astrological symbol, and I think those astrological symbols have an impact on relationships as well.
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah,
it's all tightly
yeah,
coupled, but again, somebody had to make that decision.
yeah.
Um,
Interesting
and
one
so
to mention.
you're having some commentary there, just
Wow.
like in SimCity. Like we talked about districts and neighborhoods, and how lower income neighborhoods versus higher income neighborhoods were handled, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, well, I'm going to take sort of a flip side of that, and we kind of briefly touched on it this time, which is the things that it made me think about.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Are things that games don't make me think about very often. And, in any given moment, I mean, I'd be very hyper focused on the game in a way that, this is not a game I could listen to a podcast playing, because I was very focused, and the podcast I would not have heard it because I was so focused on the little dollhouse I was working with. And then the things that made me think about, as these moments happen, like I said, with the sort of click that happens when things happen at the same time, or just all the little things, like, and the stories that
yeah.
I told, about my characters are not stories that I'm normally able to even tell about game characters, even if they're explicit stories. So it was just amazing to me that all was true. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have more to say than, like,
No,
this is
that's
a
good.
game, where I thought about Zen, because there's no multitasking. So you kind of always have to be doing the thing you're doing, and I don't know. It made me think about a lot of
Or
different things.
or the importance of a weekend,
Or the importance of a weekend. Can
or
confirm.
yeah, it's really, yeah, and that was a design decision too for some reason, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
they must have talked about it.
They have to
Um,
have.
so it must have been intentional.
Well, as critics, we have to assume it was. So
Yeah,
we
that's true.
really
That's
can't. We
true.
can't
That's true.
really.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the game
We
was
might
too
have
easy.
theories or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Maybe
Like
they had
if
a hard time balancing it. If you had a whole weekend with all your people to do whatever they wanted, yeah, it was hard to
yeah.
balance. Um,
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And this was iteration one, right, of a many iteration franchise.
right.
So they probably did what they could and thought they should. As any game has to make hard decisions to ship, and so that was just something that fell off the table. But Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we had weird and good conversations about SimCity as well, right? Of like
Yeah.
ones, at least for me, ones I did not anticipate having. And I had played it quite a bit in the past and never even thought about it, so it's pretty, yeah. Um, this whole, Maxis in general, and we attributed a lot to Will, but I think we, need to remember that there are a lot of good
Yeah, a
people
lot of
making these
people.
games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's still a lot of talented people there, and a lot of talented people helped him get to where he got to. So, but it's a very special company. It
Yeah,
was.
for sure. Yeah. Yes, it sure was. Well, I guess I'm going to say let's not do the email because we're already past an hour tonight. And I'm tired. So,
Yeah, you're running
you are
on
also
fumes.
tired. So, we both should move along. But we'll get to them. Those were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. We also love to read your reviews. If you're putting them in somewhere other than iOS, please let us know. Send them along. Do something. We'd love to read them and often read them on the air. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at devgameclub. My friend here can be seen twitching at twitch.tv/
Tamalongo Jr. with a JR at the end.
We have a fan-run Discord for the fans. There is a link for that in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, the Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun having a hard time overstating your satisfaction this week. And good night.
Good night.